Okay. Actually, I guess I should also open up the comments in case I want to look at them. I don't really read them while we're actually going back and forth, but sometimes. Oh, there's already people in there. Okay. Pop that out. Sweet. Okay. Good to go?
Yes.
Okay. Hey guys. All right, so I'm joined by Hypocrite LP yet again. For whatever masochistic reason, he's come back for round 3. So I guess well. First of all, how are you doing, LP?
Good, thanks.
Okay, good. So today we just got in it again on Twitter. I was kind of making fun of AIU's terrible logic, and Hypocrite came in this time with sapience, though. So over the course of our debates, I guess there's been a ton of mutually exclusive and insanely retarded arguments that you've made. So you've said genetic intuition, though. I can't possibly remember all of those that you've used, but you've used genetic intuition, though. You've said totality of unspecified differences, though. You've said because I want to, though. Last time you literally just bit the bullet on being inconsistent, and now you're saying sapience, though. So let's hear the argument as it now is.
All right, so I just so you know, I came back with a list. So because last time when I said totality of unspecified differences, as you put it, you were like you have to specify them. So I have a list of traits here.
Okay, let's go one by one then.
Okay, so do you want to start with that, or do you want to start with the sapiens thing? Because you're kind of misrepresenting.
We can just get the sapience thing off the table. Like if you're appealing to sapience, if sapience is wisdom, there's humans who aren't wise. So in order to be consistent about using sapience as the trait, you'd have to be willing to holocaust those humans. So unless you would bite the bullet on the retard holocaust, that would be a inconsistent argument.
Right. So this goes back to actually where we left off at the end of round 2, and I was just not satisfied with your argument because when you say like member of a sapient species, you're including, well, so there's two things here. First of all, retards are sapient. There's no, you have to go to a comatose person. If you want to talk about a human being that isn't sapient, you'd have to say in a coma, first of all.
Well, I already have an objection there, but you can continue.
Right. Second of all, we extend, even if we talk about coma patients, we extend that protection of being a member of the sapient species. And we went through this argument last time, but I was really not satisfied with your counter to that.
Yeah, I mean, you blew it off as absurd because it completely debunks you. So the two things there are that you're saying that retards are sapient. So I don't care what level, what bar you want to set for sapience. The whole point is if you set the bar at retards, there's retards who have lower cognitive capacity than the animals that we eat. So if you set the bar at
I need a citation on that.
Okay, well, there's animals who are just, they can run around, they can experience well-being and suffering, they don't want to be killed, they can solve basic problems. There's retards who are absolutely at that level. And then I'll just respond to that.
I disagree with that. Actually, I don't think there's any academic source you can cite that shows that there's an animal that's smarter than a human, even like a cognitively deficient human.
That's hilarious. There's humans who can barely do anything, who can't talk, who can't communicate, who can't solve basic problems. Farmed animals, like a pig can solve basic problems. And just hit the whole point before you come back. And the other, so there's the point about what you define as sapience. And so you can set the bar wherever you want. It's going to include some amount of animals and some amount of humans. If you set it low enough to include all humans, it'll include some animals. If you set it high enough to exclude all animals, it'll exclude some humans. And then what did you...
That's just factually incorrect.
Okay, well, you can present an argument, but you'd have to look at what is it that you're saying makes them smart, and how is it that a human can, by definition, do it better than an animal.
Sure, I'll give you my list here. So number one.
Whoa! Don't cascade into the list.
Well, sapience is number 1 on the list, but then I just in parentheses next to sapience I wrote complex emotions, empathy and compassion, language and culture, and ethics.
Okay, so let's go through those one by one. There's also a second point to what you said about sapiens, but I lost it in the back and forth there. You talked about
Right. I
initially.
said that it's the argument isn't just sapiens, but it's members of a sapient
Oh, yes.
species,
Okay.
right?
Thank you for jogging my
So
memory. And
there's
then the
that,
problem
and
with that, the hypothetical that totally debunks your position there, is you could, if 51% of the species is no longer sapient, then you'd have to bite the bullet on killing the rest. So that's the species normality argument. That's like a well-known argument, and it's well debunked. So
no,
unless you'd bite the
it's
bullet on
not. That's
killing people
not
in a
correct
world,
either,
wait,
because
wait, wait, wait 1 sec. Unless you'd bite the bullet on killing people in a world where the general characteristic of the species is to be not sapient, then it would be a contradictory position.
there's no such thing as non-sapient humans except for coma patients. I only take sapience away from coma patients because I don't think there's a retard that isn't capable of these complex emotions, the empathy and compassion, the understanding
Okay,
complex language
so
that's way
yeah,
beyond anything an animal can do. Like you're saying that there's humans that can't like do language,
yeah,
but
that
even the
absolutely
most
can't do
like
language.
brain damaged human can process language better than a pig or a chicken.
That's a brain dead human. There's humans who can't process language at all. And the point about the sapiens,
Language is
regardless of if
hardwired
you
into human
okay,
biology.
yeah, just let me point out the problem with your argument, because you can apply it to another species too. If you're going to try to argue humans are sapient by default based on your
Yes.
very strange definition of sapience, which is obviously just an attempt to create some kind of thing that only humans have, we can go down that road too. But the core point that you have to realize, we can go to another species to make this point, is that if you said that sapients were not the general characteristic of the species, then you couldn't appeal to the general characteristic of the species to justify not murdering that species. So if you're saying being
I,
a member of a sapient species, if the species is overall not sapient, then you've got a problem, because that would justify murdering the sapient members.
there's no example of that or reason to believe that that
You,
exists.
you can say there's no example to that, but the point is that that's what logically follows from your position.
You know you have to
If
you have to cite an example of like a non-sapient human who's
no,
alive
no, whoa, whoa, whoa.
or
I just
something
said
like so,
try to follow. We can
there's
talk
no
about
there's no
yeah.
sapience outside of humans, Isaac.
Okay,
So
yeah.
only
Wait, just
humans
try.
are sapient, right?
Yeah, wait, try to follow. There's two separate discussions there. So there's the discussion, we can have this discussion about, are all humans sapient by default? That's an obvious attempt to just define something that's necessarily true of humans, but whatever. There's that question.
It
But then
is
there's
though.
wait,
It's
but then there's the other. You have to hear both problems. But then there's the other problem, which you really need to just concede on immediately, which is, if you're saying that sapiens, being a member of a sapient species, is the quality that stops it being okay to murder, then hypothetically, if the species were not overall sapient, that would justify murdering. If you don't do it on the individual level, if you try to
like
do it on the
yeah,
species level, that's the
yes.
problem
That's
you have.
I mean, fine. That's true. It would.
Okay, so just to be clear, just to get a clear confirmation, if 51% of the species is not sapient, then the species isn't sapient, it's okay to murder.
That's a ridiculous hypothetical.
But how about an answer?
You can't that's like a impossible thing. That's not going to
And
happen.
that's a non-answer. So how about an answer?
Hold on a sec, man.
I know, because the thing is, I'm not trying to be harsh, but I'm taking a bit more adversarial of a tone with you, because I've just kind of, to be totally honest, just to level with you, I've just had it with your bullshit, bro. So it's really time to just drop this stuff. So do you accept that with sapiens? If 51%, if you're saying it's the species level sapiens, if the species is not overall sapient, if that's not something you can say is characteristic of the species, then it would be, by your logic, okay to murder that species. You have to go to the individual level to get around that. You can't do it at the collective level.
Well, I mean, we have to look at the whole list, and then we have to look at
How about a yes or a no? How about not dodging?
like in that to that simple question. The thing is this is what I'm talking about the list, because Like I
We
said,
can go to the list.
hold
That's
on,
a
listen,
separate question.
don't interrupt
Wait,
me.
no,
Don't
no,
interrupt
no,
me.
no,
Listen,
no,
listen,
no
listen,
dodging,
listen,
no
listen.
dodging. The
No,
list
I'm
is
not
about
dodging. I'm giving you the answer. Just shut up and listen. Listen,
no,
Isaac.
no. The answer is a yes or a no, LP. The list, that's relevant to question 1, which is how we draw
Like
the
the
bar
answer
for
to that
sapiens.
question is yes, but it's a
Thank you.
retarded question. There's
Okay,
no there's no
just
situation where that's ever going to happen.
just to get a clear yes on the record where you
Oh my
can't
God.
possibly weasel out of it later. If 51% of the species is not sapient, it's okay to murder.
In a vacuum, if you're talking about a binary species that only has one trait, which is that the thing is either sapient or not,
No,
this is
you
so we're
trying
back
to
to the
weasel.
list.
You
Back
know
to
where
the
it's-
okay.
no, we're
Listen,
not,
Isaac.
no, not till you answer the question. You're not weaseling off the point. I'm done with just giving you the benefit.
No,
of the
we
doubt.
have to look. We have to
LP,
examine the concept of the
whoa.
whole
No,
is
wait.
Jesus, fuck, man.
It doesn't. We don't have to examine anything right now for you to understand the basic consequences.
You won't let me speak, dude.
Wait, because I want a clear answer. I don't want something you can
This is
weasel
a
out of
stupid
later.
question. I'll explain to you why it's a stupid question if you'll let me talk.
Wait. When I get a clear fucking answer to the question, I'll be happy to let you talk. So to be clear,
The answer to the stupid question is yes.
Yeah, so if 51% of the species is not sapient, it's okay to murder.
Retarded question.
But the answer is yes on your count.
Yes.
Okay.
Assuming there's no other traits that are relevant and there's no other context that's relevant, right?
If you're saying that that's the quality that's necessary. So if you're saying the quality necessary is the absence
I told
of sapiens.
It's the totality of the traits and the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So what that means is if you have a list of traits, you can't debunk one unless it satisfies all the other traits as well. Do you follow what I mean by that?
I'll tell you exactly what I think of that. If you name a bunch of traits that individually are bad arguments and you say a bunch of bad arguments together makes a good argument, you'd have to accept that logic for humans too.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like, let's say to make a really simple example, I say that trait 1 is intelligence and trait 2 is, for example, you don't eat something that walks on 2 legs.
Yeah, one of them isn't enough to murder. If they're all there, it's enough to murder. I get what you're saying. I'm just pointing out what the consequence of this.
Right.
If you're saying that a bunch.
So you can't just pull sapiens out without examining it against the other. Like you can't.
No, wait. There's a
without
misunderstanding here. You
it
think I'm
against
trying
the
to wait. That's not me debunking your entire. 1 second. When you go one by one with the traits, you're just pointing out that trait individually is not going to do it. If you want to take the position that a collection of individually terrible arguments.
Okay, yeah, no, so that's fine. Like I don't think sapiens individually does it. There's a whole list of traits.
Okay, so let's go through them one by one.
All right, so we have.
So what's first?
So we have sapience, which again, just to reiterate, complex emotions, empathy and compassion, language and culture, and ethics.
Okay, so wait, that's a whole shit ton of stuff. Let's go one by one.
No. We're good. You can't even start until I tell you the whole list.
I'm not letting you give me a shotgun argument, LP. We're going one by one.
I actually condensed this list down to you obviously don't understand the argument because
no, I'm just done with your bullshit, bro. So do you want to go one by one or do you not?
You can't go one by one. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
You can go one by one. If you're going to say the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, you can say that at the end.
Saying. The whole is
the consequence. If you're saying,
but why sit through dumb arguments that don't satisfy that? I'm amazed that it
isn't completely obvious to you because we're finding out if the individual components of your justification
then
work.
That doesn't satisfy the condition of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts, does it?
Wait, but LP, if all of them individually fail and then you pull the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, then what you're saying is that a ton of bad arguments added together form a good argument.
No. They don't individually fail because they all work together. That you're trying to tear them apart when they listen. So let me give you a really simple example so you can understand, okay? If I give you 2 traits, I say intelligence and you can't walk on 2 legs. And then you say, would you eat a retard? That doesn't satisfy it because a retard walks on 2 legs. In order to satisfy it, you would have to say a retard in a wheelchair or something like that. Do you understand? right? So
yes,
you can't.
You're not following.
So you can't say retard beats the intelligence argument because it doesn't
No.
beat the walk on two legs argument.
You're
That's
not
what the whole
following.
is greater than the sum of the parts means.
It's very obvious what the whole is greater than the sum of its parts means. What you're not following is that if the whole is composed of a ton of individually shit justifications, then what you're committed to is the position that a bunch of individually bad arguments somehow arbitrarily become a good argument when you combine them.
No, it's not arbitrary.
Well, what about combining that particular set of shitty arguments makes it into a valid argument and not some other set of shitty arguments?
What all you're saying is that if I give you a set of conditions that satisfy your argument, it's quote unquote shitty because you can't beat it by pulling it apart and attacking it individually.
You can't beat it though. It's not an argument. So what I'm saying is that if you're giving me some compound justification, the way we deal with that is we tease it apart into its individual aspects. We go one by one. We see if any of them actually justify what you're trying to justify.
Right. So what you're saying is
wait. And if none of them justify it individually, then you're committed to for the manyth time, then you're committed to the position that a bunch of shitty arguments added together somehow form a good argument. Do you follow?
That's not true. That's not.
Okay. So you don't follow. You don't follow what's being said. Listen carefully.
I know. I follow. I follow.
Okay, let's go step. I'll go step by step, and I'll get confirmation from you on every part. You have an argument that is a combination of traits.
Yes. So all the traits. That's the argument.
Yeah. It's possible that those traits individually do not justify murder.
Yes.
If it is true that none of the traits can individually justify murder, then your final position is that a ton of bad arguments for murder add up to a good argument for murder.
So when you said it was possible to name more than one trait, you lied because you're
nice dodge.
No,
I'm not admit it.
Admit it. You're now specifying it has to be one single trait. That's what you're saying. No, yes, you are.
No, that's literally just a straw man. It can be your compound. It can be a compound of traits. I'm just talking about how we analyze it. So when we look at the compound, we break it down and go individually. We still analyze it ultimately as a compound in the end. But the problem, the extremely obvious problem that you probably didn't think of and now you feel likely retarded for, is that if all those traits are bad on their own, you're saying a ton of bad arguments added together becomes a good argument.
No, I'm saying that there's no hypothetical that debunks a single trait individually is not good enough. You would have to debunk all the traits in order to prove that it's not a valid list that justifies the difference.
You're not following the argument.
You're not following the argument. Your argument literally demands that there's a single trait.
No, LP.
Yes, it does.
No,
that's what you're saying.
LP, is humanity just an individual trait, or is that a compound of things? How many properties that you call a trait actually literally reduce to one property? It's like pretty much everything. If you describe hair, is hair describable in terms of one individual characteristic, or does it have a few characteristics? Is it a certain length? Is it made of a certain thing? There's always a ton of traits built into even you just using one trait. I have no problem with you trying to present a compound. Again, please follow. If you're saying that there's a bunch of traits that individually do not justify murder, but somehow do as a group, what you are saying is that a ton of bad arguments added together makes a good argument.
No, I'm saying it's one single argument. No, the traits together is one single argument.
Yes, it is when you look at it like that, but it's a combination of a ton of bad arguments.
Right. So Anthony Hammock makes this point here in the chat. Army A beats Army B. Name the soldier in Army A, which if in Army B would make Army B. Right. So in other words, if a bunch of bad soldiers in an army are big enough to beat a bad army, they still win, Isaac, even if they're shitty individual soldiers.
I'm not sure what you're reading there, but Hammock is a pretty intense vegan. That guy's a patron of mine. So I highly doubt you're reading something that's cutting against my position. He's probably criticizing you.
Well, a bunch of shitty soldiers individually can beat a good army of not enough good soldiers, right?
If the argument is that a ton, it's simple. If you're saying,
I'm not saying it's a question of quantity for the arguments, but I'm just showing how your logic doesn't follow that individual shittiness means that together you can't have something good.
Well, no, the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts. But if the
Exactly.
whole, I never denied that. But if the parts individually are shit, then you're saying that a ton of shit put together somehow makes something decent.
Yeah, why not? What good is a carburetor from a car individually? It's useless, man. But you put it in the car and it takes you places. Why is this so hard for you to understand?
It's a very loose analogy to go to a car, but I mean, I want you to
Anything you can like pull apart down to its tiny little molecules and say, well, look at this shitty molecule. It doesn't do anything on its own.
Again, you're not following the conversation. I'm not saying that the whole can't be greater than the sum of its parts. I'm just saying that the particular condition here would be you saying that a ton of bad arguments together form a good argument. You can say that if you want to. It just has absurd consequences.
That's not what I'm saying. You don't seem to understand. I'm saying that in order to debunk the list, you would have to have a scenario that satisfies all conditions.
If you bit the bullet on the whole being greater than the sum of its parts on a ton of really shitty arguments, what you're committed to is that a bunch of shit added together somehow becomes a good justification.
You're just playing word games to make it sound like it's bad.
Let me go step by step.
Oh my Christ.
I know you're a little slow, but we're just going to go through it. So, look, you're saying you have an argument and it's a combination of different arguments.
You said, what is the difference between animals and humans?
Yeah, and you're saying it's multiple differences.
Right.
Okay. Now, if it's possible that all of those differences on their own do not justify what you're talking about.
Okay.
It's possible that collectively they do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're saying that, then what you would be saying is that a ton of shitty arguments put together somehow forms a valid argument. So if I make a ton of shit arguments for murdering you that individually are totally crappy, you stack them together and now suddenly it's fine to murder LP. If that's the kind of position you want to take, then that's the kind of position you can take.
If it justifies it, it justifies it, man. What do you want me to say to that? Like you said.
Well, what I want to point out to you is that if we go through every single one of them, LP, and you say to every single part of your argument, that's a shit argument, I'm confused about how it mystically becomes a good argument. And if there's not some kind of clear reasoning there, then it's just you arbitrarily saying that a bunch of shit stacked together makes something good, and I can do the same thing to you, and you'll probably reject it.
So will you just say that you don't believe there is a trait? Right? You don't think there is anything that anybody could name that would satisfy the argument, right?
Not necessarily. That's you not understanding how the argument works. The argument works on a subjective individual level. There may not be a trait for me. There may be a trait for you. It can be different person to person. For me, do I think that there's a trait in the context of stabbing animals to death for hamburgers? No, I don't.
Right. So,
but again, it's not an objective thing. There could be a trait for someone else. It's just to test if your position is consistent. You could say that the trait is intelligence. And if you bite the bullet on intelligence, that is the trait for you. That's consistent position.
Okay. Well, I have a list of conditions that all must be satisfied. That's my argument.
All right. Well, let's go one by one. What's first?
Sapience.
Okay, so sapience, you're actually lumping a bunch of things in. So let's go the individual parts of sapience. What's the first one?
Complex emotions.
Okay, so there's humans who do not have complex emotions. Is it okay to murder those humans?
Citation needed. But
there's humans who are...
It's not okay. It's never okay to eat humans.
Retarded as fuck. There's humans who can't talk, who can't think, who can't have reasonable relationships, who are led around by a caregiver all day. They don't have any kind of complex emotions.
You think those people are on the same level as animals? You're objectively wrong.
No, I'm asking, what is it that makes their emotions more complex in any kind of tangible way that you can prove than an animal?
I'm just going by the science that because
science though isn't an argument.
No, but it is though. It is a pretty good argument. Like you've made this false equivalency between retards and animals many times that I've gone and done a bunch of research trying to see if there's any validity to the claim. And I'm not like an expert, obviously, but I've looked at it enough that I can come back and conclusively say I don't believe that this is a valid comparison you can make.
In what way is a severely retarded person's emotions more complex than a cow?
They can feel emotions that cows are not capable of feeling.
Like what? What are you talking about?
Guilt, shame.
There's people who can't feel guilt or shame. You want to try again?
Yeah, there are like psychopaths and that.
And
But
retarded people. There's people who are just retarded as fuck and can't conceptualize something like guilt.
well, maybe. I'm not an expert, so I can't on every individual thing say this is true or not. But
Can you do
I
it on a
I
single
don't think that
individual thing?
that a pig is smarter than like a retarded human, man. That's crazy.
Okay, in what way? What can you say about the intelligence of retarded people that in all instances gives clear proof that they're smarter than pigs? What can they do? Do you have any tangible evidence, or is this just you asserting something?
Theory of mind and episodic
There's,
memory.
and do you think that all retarded people have theory of mind?
Yes.
A theory of mind?
Yes.
Do you know what theory of mind is?
Yes.
That's an ability to project yourself into someone else's mind and picture what their experience is, understand that they're other beings.
Yeah. Humans start developing that at 1 year old.
Yeah,
and,
there's
and,
people,
and they can do it by age 4. A normal, not impaired human has like a pretty good theory of mind by age 4, and by like age 12 they have recursive theory of mind.
if someone is so retarded that they lack theory of mind, is it now okay to murder that person and eat them?
The only case where that would be true, where somebody would be that retarded, is if they're comatose, because like
I don't. What's your evidence for that?
language and theory of mind, it's part of how our brain works. This is what makes us different from animals, Isaac.
Okay, so let's say you have consciousness and you can't actually understand that other people have their minds. Do you think that that would justify murdering you?
Well, so first of all, like I just said, that's not possible for a human.
Okay, so let's just go to a hypothetical. If that's the case, if you can't register other minds, you can't project into other minds, it's just you existing, you can experience, happiness, well-being, whatever. You can't project into other minds. Like, there's...
Well, happiness is a complex emotion. Animals don't experience happiness. So that you'd still...
Animals don't experience happiness?
Yeah.
You don't think that animals experience happiness?
No, they can experience joy, but not happiness. Happiness requires you to be able to like analyze your situation and like ask yourself, am I happy?
What the fuck are you talking about? You think that happiness involves analyzing your situation? It can. Happiness can just be you're happy. You can go outside and see the sun and feel nice and smile.
That's joy. That's two different things.
So you're defining happiness as some kind of like rational process?
Yes.
That's a strange definition of happiness.
Well, this is off of like the scientific papers and shit that I've been reading over the last little while, where they talk about what animals are capable of and what they're not capable of. And that's what they say, that animals are only capable of 6 basic emotions. Like, and so they can't experience suffering either. They can experience pain, but they can't experience suffering.
Okay, so let's say we've got some person. They're just really retarded. They're senile. They're an infant. They're, mentally ill, whatever, however you want to construct the hypothetical. We remove it in some artificial context. They can experience joy, but they can't experience what you're calling happiness, which I don't even know how I feel about that definition. Is that now
it's an academic definition? Just like people are saying that I'm semantically manipulating shit. I'm using academic terms here, just to be clear.
And wait a second. We also, I lost my place there. You just jumped off theory of mind. How did that happen? So wait, if someone lacks theory of mind, you saying it's okay to murder them?
They would have to satisfy all of the conditions on my list in order
Please,
to.
LP.
Also, there's something else. There's something else I need to. Point out, which is that this list is in the context of like modern civil, like of our comfy society that we live in. There's obviously like the rules change depending on the context that you're living in, obviously.
You keep going to list though when I try to get a clear answer. And I think it's because you know that we're going to go through these one by one, and you're going to either say, no, that doesn't justify murder, or you're going to say it is, and it's going to sound fucking crazy. So theory of mind, if a human lacks theory of mind, is it okay to murder them?
It's never okay to murder a human.
It's never okay. Is that based on anything other than them just being human?
Well, number 3 on the list is the sacrosanctity of human dignity.
Oh God. Oh my God. Okay, Jesus Christ. So if we go through your entire list of things, is it just going to boil down to you saying, well, because they're human?
I understand that that's a kind of
Horrible
eyebrow
argument?
raising
A
point, but
terrible argument?
well, the thing is I think I can. The way I want to demonstrate the sacrosanctity of human dignity is by proving that you believe in it, at least on a subconscious level.
Human dignity. Does it boil down to all humans have value because they have this thing you're calling human dignity?
Well, that might be like the end conclusion, but that's not why. Like, I can have a different way of
Because
like demonstrating that this
yeah,
is just
because it
like
seems
I have a descriptive argument based off of the things that you've said in the past, basically.
it seems to me that what you're doing is you're trying to create this big retarded smokescreen wall of terrible justifications. And whenever I put pressure on any of them, you say, "Oh, it's a wall, though." It's like, okay,
No,
well,
these are
go
good faith
one
arguments, Isaac. These are things I actually believe.
I actually at this point would just consider you a bullshitter on the topic, but whatever. So when you say it's human dignity, that sounds like it's just coming down to human, though.
Well, I mean, at the end of
By
the day,
virtue of being human?
that's sort of that is sort of what it is. But like, there's obviously a lot of other animals that it's not my preference to eat. Like, I don't eat
Okay.
dogs, cats, monkeys, chimps,
If
dolphins,
there's
and
if
the
there's
list like speaks to that.
if there's a sentient alien species, they're highly conscious, they can experience well-being and suffering, they are moral agents and everything. They don't have human dignity. Is it cool to murder those beings?
Well, I think dignity is an extension of sapience. To be honest, like I would think that we would grant them the same dignity that we grant
So it's
humans.
so it's not really human dignity, is it?
Well,
It's just
humans
it's
are the only sapient species in the known universe. So, like, you could have a
so well
hypothetical.
wait,
If
you
you
said
want to
the
bring in
word
some
justification.
fictional, like, why is it always aliens, man? Why not like
It's just the easy
interstellar
example.
vampires or Vorpal bunnies or
It's just the
broodhatch
easy example.
Nantukos? I don't know. So, but if you
Yeah,
want to
if you're
theorize
it,
some kind of other sapient species, then yeah, we probably would treat them with like a certain level of dignity too.
yeah, but you don't notice the stupidity here. Your third argument is just part of your first argument. You're saying it's sapience or human dignity, and I say, what is human dignity? You say, oh, well, it's basically just sapience. It's like, okay, so that's not actually anything. It's just
Well,
your
so,
sapience
so
again.
the truth is I'm not really sure where it derives from. It's probably partly cultural, probably partly like just our evolution and our biology. But like I said, I can demonstrate based off things you said that I think you subconsciously subscribe to this.
Well, let's continue actually doing what we're doing instead of going on some massive derail. So
Well, if I think
going by
I
the
think it's worth establishing
well,
whether or not the
wait,
sacrosanctity of
but
human
I'm not
dignity
letting
is a
you. I'm
valid
not.
concept.
Well, wait. It's sacrosanct human dignity. If it just comes down to sapience, then it's not its own argument. It's just sapience. And we didn't even remotely finish going through sapience. We got to the first part of sapience, which was you said it's theory of mind. So I'm asking you, is it okay to murder beings who lack? In fact, is your argument here circular? Actually, if I say, is it okay to kill beings who lack a theory of mind? You say they're human. I say, why okay, so is it just that they're human that gives them value? You say it's sapience, and I say what sapience, and then it involves that's a circle. That is a circular argument. That's really stupid.
No, so
That's a total
these
circle argument.
conditions are like a series of conditions that create like the favorability of what to eat, basically. So humans would be the least favorable thing to eat because they satisfy the most conditions on the list. But in an apocalypse situation, obviously I would still eat humans if it came down to that. And like if it did get to that situation where cannibalism was on the table, retards would be the first people on the menu because they have less of the criteria on the list. You understand?
Yeah, I understand that in an apocalyptic situation, you would eat people and you'd start with retards. And let's just, for the sake of argument, I'll just say I'd do the same. I don't think I would, but let's just say that that's on the table. We're not in an apocalyptic situation, so it's just going to a completely false analogy.
No, totally. So that's
So
why in the situation we're in, the list we can just stop at pigs and cows and chickens because they give us everything we need
okay,
and they
yeah,
satisfy
but
like they make the most
well,
sense
yeah, you
based
still
off of
have
the
to,
totality of the
yeah,
list.
you still have the fundamental problem of you have to draw a line that's going to allow us to kill all of those animals and not allow us to kill any humans. So you said theory of mind. So if a human lacks theory of mind, is it okay to murder that human?
I only believe that could be true in a coma patient, because I think that theory of mind and episodic memory are baked into our biology. Same with like language.
You're trying to make it into some kind of debate about like psychology and like
neuroscience. So these are relevant things.
Yeah.
Because you want to know what's different between humans and animals, and the answer has to do with neuroscience and psychology.
Whoa. No, we're talking about what's the moral justification. So in the context of seeing if it's moral, all we have to do is remove the trait hypothetically. So when you try to get me to generate real life examples, which can be done for many of these things, but that's actually not necessary. All I have to do is create a situation where that's not there and see if you're okay.
Right. But this goes back to what I was saying to you on DM today, which is that your argument is the equivalent of, if a human was an apple, would you eat it? Like you're taking away what fundamentally makes the human the human.
I would. Wouldn't?
Yes, no, of course. So would I. And if a human didn't satisfy all the things on these lists, it'd be perfectly ethical to eat them as well. But what you're trying to do is take away
my list is sentience. If it's not sentient, I'll eat it. That's a very reasonable thing.
Yeah, but you don't even know sentience any more than you know whether or not somebody has theory of mind.
Solipsism, though. So look, with theory of mind, we go to a hypothetical. You lack theory of mind. You can't conceptualize the minds of other beings. Like maybe you have some severe fucking autism or something that just stops you from being able to comprehend.
That's not how it works, though, Isaac.
I
just want you to make sure. I want to make sure you understand my what's the word? Objection. My objection to your reasoning here, which is that I'm trying to tell you what the difference is between humans and animals, and then you try to take away what fundamentally makes a human, so that they wouldn't be a human anymore. And then it's some kind of like gotcha if I bite the bullet on that. Or
LP. There's humans who don't have theory of mind. I mean, do you think, for example, just to take an obvious example, do you think that an infant has a theory of mind?
It starts to develop at 1 year old. So like obviously a newborn infant.
There's a ton of, how many humans exist right now who are under a year old?
So number 4 on the list is potential.
Potential though.
Yeah.
Okay. So with theory of mind, again, for the millionth time. In fact, first, let's just get you to acknowledge that little circularity. So if you're saying that it's about sapience, and I say, what's sapience? You say it's theory of mind. I say, what's theory of mind? You say it's a fundamental property of being human. I say, what's being human?
Well, no, we know what theory of mind is. It's the ability to conceptualize your other people's way of thinking.
But you acknowledge that when you try to add in human dignity, that's just circular, right?
The human dignity is a weird one. I need to explain it because it's important to the argument.
You told me it's basically just sapience.
I think that it's derived from sapience, and like our culture is derived from our sapience and our evolution, and then human dignity is derived from that as well. So yeah, like this is what it means when you say the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. These things are all interconnected, Isaac.
Yeah, so I mean, I've already refuted that multiple times, and I think that you just can't even grasp it.
Bunch of shitty arguments, though.
Yeah, a bunch of shitty arguments added together, making a good argument with no principled reason why they make a good argument. You just arbitrarily declare they do. That's fucking retarded, and you would not accept that if I use that logic on you.
I mean, I'm not sure about that. If you could make an irrefutable argument for why I should, or not irrefutable, but like,
if I pick a ton of random qualities that don't justify murdering you, like, oh, you're 6 foot tall, you're a male, you're white, you're whatever, and I say, yeah, all of those alone, they don't justify murdering you, but together, yeah, I think together they do. The whole's greater than the sum of its parts. Oh, why is it greater? Because I declare it to be, no particular reason. Would you accept that?
Actually, I see what you're getting at now.
Thank you.
So I think though that the problem is you have to recognize the context, which is that we're identifying a difference between humans and animals. That's the whole point of what we're talking about. So if the list satisfies that there is a significant difference between humans and animals, then yeah, it's fine for me to say that this justifies it. Like that still satisfies your name the trait argument.
Again, it's totally possible to satisfy the argument. You can satisfy the argument with literally anything. You could satisfy the argument with hair color. It's just a consistency test. If you say what justifies murdering animals, well, they're not all the same color, so that's fucking retarded. What justifies, killing a cow? Oh, it has, white hair. It's like, okay, well, there's humans who have white hair. If you say, yep, murder him, that's a consistent position. So you can satisfy the argument with literally any trait at all.
Okay. Well, this list satisfies the argument for me.
Okay, but I'm glad. Well, wait. But the thing is, if you don't actually end up biting the bullet on any individual aspect of it, then it's pretty crazy to say that somehow the list works, because then you're saying, like you just acknowledged, that a ton of bad arguments make a good argument for some arbitrary, unprincipled reason. That's a big, big problem.
I mean, I'm going to have to think on that one some more. Like I'm going to have to really bake on it, because I'm not sure how sound that is. But we can just keep going in the meantime, and that's one that's going to take me some serious thinking time.
Yeah, no, the only reasonable comeback to that is something like it's about just this specific set of differences, and that's a different set of differences, so it's mine that works and not yours. But the problem is that they're both arbitrary and undefined, so you're saying that the set works for some unspecified, arbitrary, unprincipled reason. So I still think even that would collapse, but you can think more on it. But if you agree, you wouldn't accept being killed for a collection of individually shitty reasons taken as a whole, then I don't think you can use the same logic. So basically, LP, you're going to have to bite the bullet on some individual component of your argument, or you're going to have to contradict yourself by actually using this whole is greater than the sum of its parts nonsense.
How is it a contradiction? Oh, because I wouldn't accept it for myself?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're saying that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts sometimes, I guess, is basically what you're saying there. It's like when it's convenient for me, it is. There's not actually any principle. I don't really describe why that's true.
Right. So, but you said this is a subjective thing. So if I believe that that it's wrong, that it's always wrong to murder humans, then you can't come up with any list that would go against that belief of mine, right?
No, if you say humans and you bite the bullet on the consequence, I will tell you your position is consistent. There's 3 people already who I've debated who have consistent anti-vegan positions. There's Seth the programmer, who accepts that his position is, quote, pure evil. I think you can be consistent about pure evil. There's JF, who Garapi?
Yeah.
Who says that it's that he values existence more than well-being. So even if he were tortured infinitely and all of his descendants were tortured infinitely, he would accept that in order to survive. That's a consistent position you can oppose veganism from. And there's Destiny, who says it's about value reciprocation and says if a being can't reciprocate values, it's fine to murder them, even if they contain more well-being than the total well-being of all of humanity over history to the power of infinity. So there are consistent reasons. You can form a consistent anti-vegan position. Hannibal Lecter is consistent. The point is that when you're in
my list is consistent, though, right?
Well, you can't wait. You can be consistent about it, but the point is that those consistent positions that cut against veganism, they are pretty fucking crazy. You can hold it if you want to, but in a moral debate, it's not like there's a fact of the matter. We know morality is subjective. It's can you persuade people? And if I can show that your beliefs lead to a conclusion that is radically opposed to a value that's held by pretty much everybody, no one's going to buy what you're saying. So just to be specific, when you say, I can say human though, and I can be consistent, yes, you can. But if it's human though specifically, and I know you might say something more complicated than just human though, but just to take that as an example, the consequence would be, okay, well, if it's not human, you can kill it.
Yeah.
So if you bite the bullet on that, I'd say it's a consistent position. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's roughly true, but I still like I said, I wouldn't want to kill higher intelligence animals and
chimps
LP,
there's also
dolphins, but more or less, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you're the one who wants to talk biology and all this stuff. I'm not going to get suckered into that, but the
Well,
definition in
no, I
biology.
think you should
Wait, one
seriously,
sec.
if you're going
The
to constantly
definition.
compare
Wait.
retards to animals, you should like prove that that's even possible.
It's a retard is just a intuitively easy way to show this to people. It's about the philosophical concept of whether the absence of that quality justifies murder. But
Well, I think it's like a bit disingenuous then, because if a retard
look,
is still more sapient than a human.
One sec. We can go back to sapiens, but with human though. Okay, so if you say that it's about humanity, oh, I might have lost my position there and all that back and forth. That's why we shouldn't chop in too much on each other. But long story short, if you bite the bullet on humanity, that's going to justify killing all things that aren't human. So you kind of said yes to that, but the thing is, you will actually say no to that if we're careful. I remember what I was going to say now. If you want to talk about biology, I mean, the definition of a species, as far as I understand, the line between species is the ability to interbreed. By that logic, once we evolved to be significantly different from what we are right now, to a point that we couldn't breed with a human as they are in 2018, it would be okay to murder even those beings by your logic. So human though would be you could be consistent about it. It would be a very bad argument.
I don't think that makes it a bad argument, because 100 million more years of evolution are going to mean that current versions of humans are obsolete. Like that.
You seem to just like, I don't even mean this in a mean way, but you seem to struggle with hypotheticals. You seem to always kind of go to like, well, I mean, this isn't exactly going to happen, so it seems fine. But the thing is, if I can point to a condition where we're operating by your own morality and you say, oh, well, that's immoral, then that's you saying there's a problem with your own morality.
Yeah, no, but even what you just said wouldn't satisfy my list, because we're still sapient. Even if somebody evolves to be even more sapient than we are, it doesn't stop the current humans from being sapient. So what you just said doesn't actually create a contradiction.
You're correct if you're talking about sapience. What I was talking about was the trait human, and I made it clear that you might be saying something more complicated than this. I was just pointing out the consequence of if you were to say human, though.
Right. So can you offer a hypothetical that debunks my entire list? The answer is no. Therefore, I'm consistent.
I don't need to be able to do that. Again, if we have a ton of individually shit characteristics and you won't bite the bullet on any of them, then to say the collection of them together somehow becomes valid. That's you saying the whole is greater than the sum of its parts for some unprincipled random reason. You wouldn't accept that. So there's different paths we can go here. If you already know that it's just going to be me pressuring you on each individual part of this justification and you won't bite the bullet on any of them, then I would honestly say go back to the drawing board and come back when you want to do round 4. If you think that you are going to bite the bullet on some part of your justification, then we can continue if you want to.
I don't know, man. I would like to talk about the human dignity thing. I would like to just run this by you and see what you think about it.
Okay, I'm happy to go there, but just in the interest of a respectful conversation, will you concede that theory of mind alone is a bad argument?
No.
You think that killing a being is fine if it lacks theory of mind?
Well, I mean, okay, look, I'll concede that individually, I don't think that any of them are individually good enough. That's why I say the whole is greater than the.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Okay. Well, 1 sec. If you actually admit that individually they're really bad, then
not bad, insufficient. It's just like a carburetor on its own is not useful.
And it's not a car. You can't. Yeah. Okay. I get it. But okay. Point is though. Well. In fact, no. I actually think I will insist on bad, because you're literally rejecting it as a bad reason. You can go for
inadequate. Not bad, inadequate.
Wait, but you just rejected it. So it alone is a bad reason.
Inadequate.
How is it? Okay, so how is murdering you because is height a good argument for murder? Or is it a bad argument?
Bad argument.
Yeah, so why are you insisting that yours are just inadequate and not bad? If the thing doesn't justify murder on its own, that it on its own is a bad argument. You should just concede that theory of mind on its own is a bad argument. I mean, you already conceded all of them are inadequate. I don't see how you're separating inadequate from bad. If it's an argument that isn't capable of justifying what it's trying to justify, then it's a bad argument.
I'm not sure, man. I think that
Okay. Well, and well, I mean, it
I think that
seems it just
sapience is a
yeah.
pretty good argument, to be honest.
Okay, I hear you. It's weird because you're just like I don't. Do you acknowledge that you're shifting around a bit on your foundations? I don't even mean it in a Weasley way. I think you're trying to find somewhere to stand. I don't think you will find somewhere to stand, but you do acknowledge you're switching around a little bit here. It's 1 minute it's yeah okay, all of them together are inadequate. The next it's oh sapience is okay. Then it's human dignity. That is so you're moving around a bit. Surely you acknowledge that.
I mean, yeah, okay. You know what? You're right. They're
Thank
individually
you.
they're bad arguments.
Thank you.
They're
Okay.
well
And I
insufficient.
will I will at this point, after you've actually conceded 2 points, I'll say that I was too quick to jump down your throat and call you intellectually dishonest. So okay, with what was it you want to talk about next? Human dignity.
Yeah.
I'm happy to go there. If you're saying all the others on their own they're inadequate, you want to talk about human dignity. I still think that it just forms part of this weird circular justification where I ask you what's the trait, you say it's sapience, I say what is that, you say something like theory of mind or whatever, I ask you, you mentioned human dignity. It's like human dignity just seems to be defined as those other things, but yet you rely on it as one of those properties. So it seems we don't have to argue about whether it's circular, because I think that I would need to think about the language a little there to spell that out perfectly, but I'm pretty fucking sure it's circular. But we can talk about it on its own though, the human dignity thing.
Yeah, so the reason human dignity is important is because it's I wouldn't eat a coma patient and I wouldn't like eat a dead person or like fuck a corpse. I know you're into that, but I think this is the
Wait.
argument.
I'm not into it. I'm not into it. I only fuck the occasional corpse. But
Yeah.
with corpse fucking though, it's not that I personally want to. I also don't want to commit incest. It's that you can't actually find a rational reason for saying that it's wrong.
Right.
To be clear, just because I know you'll go here, in non-procreative incest, not when you're making a child
I
suffer by
wasn't going to
being.
go there, but I've noticed a tick in your reasoning here, an inconsistency, if you will, which is that you you've said that it's not unethical, strictly speaking, to fuck a corpse, and that you've also said to me in one of our private chats that you don't think it's unethical to eat a coma patient. But in both of those cases, there's a caveat, which is that they have to consent beforehand. Is that
Yeah, and to be clear, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but to be clear, that's because of the suffering that it would cause in their life while they are a conscious sentient being. Like, just picture this for a second. Would it not diminish your quality of life if you knew that someone was going to eat you after? And if you don't bite the bullet on that, don't you at least acknowledge that there's people who would say that that would fuck with their quality of life to know that's coming?
yes?
Yeah, because I'm not saying the actual act of the eating is wrong. I don't think the act of the eating is wrong. I think it's the causing of suffering while they are sentient, or if they're already dead, it's the causing of suffering to people who care about what happens to their corpse. It's not that I'm saying on some level the non-sentient person matters, which is I think what you're implying the inconsistency is. I'm not saying that.
Okay, but you've also said that it's okay to eat roadkill. True?
I think it's okay, and
But
I would, if there's not someone who's going to suffer as a result of it, I would say the same for humans if that's where you're going.
well, that's okay. That's a contradiction then.
Can you tell me how? If it is, I'll change my position, but I don't see a contradiction.
Well, so you now we have to live in a world where we have to worry that if we get hit by a car, someone's going to eat us.
Well, it's the exact same reasoning as the thing that I just said, right? Which is it would cause you suffering in the same way as you would suffer knowing that you're going to get eaten when you die. I mean, it's literally just another version of that. It's like I'm going to get eaten if I get fucking hit by a car.
Right.
It would
So
trip people out and
therefore
make them feel
it
bad.
would be unethical to allow that, right?
It would the actual causing of suffering to the sentient people would be unethical. not the act of eating.
Right. So therefore, okay, so let me, should it or should it not be legal to eat people who got hit by cars in your world?
I will answer that with a yes or no, but I just want to point out that whether it's legal is a bit different than what I think about it in a fundamental ethical way. So do I think it should be legal? I think it probably should not be legal. In fact, I know it should not be legal because people would trip the fuck out if they know that their relatives might get fucking taken from a crime scene or whatever and eaten. That just seems like a bad idea. But I am, to be clear on the ethical level, I'm not saying it is wrong because of something inflicted on a non-sentient being.
Right. But are you starting to see the contradiction here or?
No. No, I don't see any contradiction.
Okay,
A contradiction is me saying something and its opposite. So what is the thing that I'm simultaneously saying and rejecting?
you don't think it should be legal or illegal to eat a roadkill raccoon, right?
I don't think it should be illegal, no.
Right. So there's a difference in trait between humans and animals, which is that the humans can conceptualize like the unpleasant things happening to them after they die, and the animals can't, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So this is an example of how sapience matters, but you wouldn't say that it's okay to kill a retard or to eat a retard if you got hit by a car, right? Like
If you match the conditions, I would. So if you were to say that it's no one will ever know about it, it's not going to cause suffering anywhere in the universe, I wouldn't actually say it's fundamentally wrong. For pragmatic reasons, like the fact that generally speaking it will cause suffering, I think that we should make it illegal.
right.
Just
So
like there's other things that don't necessarily always cause suffering, but they pretty fucking reliably cause suffering, so we don't allow them. But there's not something that I'm simultaneously saying is ethical and not ethical. Sorry, are you there? Or
yeah,
did
no,
we
I'm
cut-
just
oh,
I'm just
yeah.
thinking
Oh
about
no,
it
take your time. Take your time.
because
It's all good.
so you don't the consent doesn't actually matter, real is what you're saying. It's more a question of whether or not anybody else knows that it's going to happen.
Well, including that person, because the consent, it's weird. Like consent itself is a strange way to think about it. It's if you want to break it down philosophically, it's like that the consent is going to have some impact on their well-being. Like if they know they're going to be eaten against their desires, that is going to fuck with them. So we respect consent. So just to be clear, if there's a human who absolutely no negative consequences will come from it, and we go to a hypothetical where it's not illegal, I wouldn't say that that's morally wrong, no. But same for an animal, right? So I'm not seeing the contradiction, but you can keep trying to spell it out if you want, though.
Well, I thought it was a contradiction because you were putting the caveat that humans have to consent, but not animals. But
Human,
because you said that it's never ethical to fuck a chicken because a chicken can't consent, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that fucking a being that can't consent is a problem. So when you're talking, I'm just trying to get what you're saying. You're thinking that I'm caring about consent in the human but not the animal context. So let's go to a human who just can't consent, like a retard. If you take that person, they can't consent, they can't think about it, there's no conceptualizing it, and they die in a situation where eating them is going to have no impact on well-being whatsoever. It's not illegal. I wouldn't say that's fundamentally wrong. No, it's not actually causing a decrease in well-being or a limiting of well-being or anything like that.
So hypothetically speaking, like if you fell into a coma and I just walked into the hospital with some A1 steak sauce and started like chowing down on you, so like surprise, because it wouldn't be unethical because you would have never expected that to happen.
Okay, tiny clarification. Just when we're talking about someone who's like in a coma or whatever, I don't accept these things for coma patients. I accept them for people who are definitely not going to wake up or
Vegetables.
who are brain dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like someone who's they're done. They're not sentient. So if I'm in that situation, like I'm a vegetable, I wouldn't say that it's like fundamentally immoral, the eating itself. I would say the reason you wouldn't do that is because it would cause me discomfort in my life as a sentient being to know that you're going to eat me after.
Yeah, so I was saying, so if I just showed up and surprise ate you, there's
So
nothing
to be clear,
ethical.
if it would make the animal unhappy to know that, I would say don't do it to the animal. And if it wouldn't make the human unhappy, I'd say do it to the human. Like if a human says I don't give a fuck, eat me after, I don't personally care. We might not do it for like health and safety reasons or legal reasons or whatever, but on an ethical level, it's not like that's fundamentally wrong. Do you really think it's fundamentally wrong? Like if someone consents to it or something, would you really think
Yeah,
that's that bad?
yeah, I think it's fundamentally wrong. Like we
Okay,
don't we don't let
yeah.
people consent to torture.
I guess I don't know the laws there to be totally honest, but can't people do some pretty fucked up like BDSM? We're going way off track here, but so
There's
do you
you can, but there could be like people generally do that because they're not going to turn each other in, right? But legally
they do what?
speaking, you can't in most places you can't consent to torture, and
Yeah,
that's how I view cannibalism and necrophilia. I view it the same way that it's like such an affront to your dignity that you just shouldn't be allowed to consent to it. That's how I see it.
yeah, I would say that I don't see it like that. So for me, it's like I care about things like suffering and well-being. And if someone's consensually wanting to be tortured, I don't think that like you might for pragmatic legal reasons, like oh, it's I don't know what the reasons would be, but maybe it's something like oh, it's hard to prove if it was consensual or not. Allowing it might like kind of let people do some kind of fucked up shit. Like there might be legal reasons you wouldn't allow it, but on a moral level, I don't actually see a valid argument to tell two consenting adults that they can't hurt each other.
I mean, I think there's issues with like coercion and stuff like that.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
but
Yeah, I'm not for it if it's coerced. But the point being, if you're trying to say it's like oh you do it to like it's about consent. It's like if that property is there with the animals, then no, don't do it to the animals. If it's not there with the humans, don't do it to the humans. I'll be consistent about it across the two situations. So if you think that's do you still think there's a contradiction there, or are you now satisfied that I have a different view than you, but it's in fact not contradictory?
it strikes me as less contradictory now that you've explained it. But I feel like it's a justification for eating animals because you're admitting that they can't conceptualize the like
Well, it would also
they can't suffer based on knowing the bad shit that's going to happen to them, unlike humans.
it would also be a justification for eating humans. Like I don't
Well,
fundamentally care.
you said you're okay with eating humans. Like,
Yeah, so where's the inconsistency?
well, yeah, but no, but humans can conceptualize. Generally, humans can conceptualize what's going to happen to them, and so therefore they would suffer knowing they're going to get eaten. But
Yeah, and
animals can't.
but I thought it was pretty clear. If you take a human who can't conceptualize it, it's like I don't really care.
I know, but the animal never can. So
Yeah,
that's
and a human who can't, I would have the exact same attitude towards.
right. So you actually, rather than being vegan, should be eating animals and humans.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't have an ethical problem with certain types of animal consumption. Veganism isn't some kind of crazy deontological never put any animal product into your body. I mean, that by that logic, something like drinking sperm, which I would not personally ever do, but that would be a non-vegan act. So you'd be able to say that eating lab meat is a non-vegan act. So people would make a separation of like dietary vegan and ethical vegan. So those things are not dietarily vegan, but ethically they actually are vegan. And for me personally, I wouldn't do those things, but it's not because of an ethical problem. It's because A, I have a big aversion to meat. B, I just don't have any desire to eat a human. And C, I'm pretty convinced that it wouldn't be very healthy. So those would be reasons I wouldn't do that. But none of those are ethical reasons.
All right. Well, I don't have an ethical problem with eating meat based off of like our first conversation, which is the non-identity argument. And because of what you just said, like I don't think the animals really suffer. Or I mean, ideally, like obviously there is suffering that happens, and I am pro welfare improvements, but I don't think that there's an ethical issue with, in general, with eating farm animals and what have you.
Okay, so I know you think there's not an issue. So, okay, let's just locate ourselves in this conversation. So we've talked about basically this thing of sapience, which you're saying it comes down to a ton of separate traits. You agree that individually they're bad arguments. So then basically you're stuck on this point of to say the whole is greater than the sum of its parts is to say that for some unprincipled reason, a collection of bad arguments forms a good argument, and you don't want to allow people to use that reasoning against you. So there's no way to argue that consistently. So as far as I can tell, you're at a point of not having a defense of your position. So do you want to keep going, or have you asked what you want to ask? I have all the time in the world, so whatever you prefer.
No, I think I'm basically I do have a couple of things I wanted to throw at you based off of our previous conversation. These are like short little things, but yeah, I'm basically I'm gonna have to think about this, what you're saying about bad arguments not forming a good one or whatever.
Yep. Well, and I'll also say this to you. Instead of us going live every time we have this conversation or going back and forth on Twitter, because I'll tell you, you can do what you want on Twitter. You're a free agent, but I don't spend my time trolling you on Twitter. You can just enter the Discord. And if you want to talk about this, I'm always on there. I can always go on voice and you can run your stuff by me. So I just say that. But go ahead and ask your things.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to throw at you is that I've identified something I'm calling the Isaac paradox.
Okay.
And it's the ethical principle that states that it's simultaneously ethical for a vegan to stand in front of a pig delivery truck and for the truck driver to drive over the vegan.
Whoa, what? I don't think that it's ethical to drive over the vegan.
Yeah, because you think that it's okay to kill things that are getting in the way of society progressing. Like all the animals that die in crop productions and shit like that.
No, not rational agents. Okay, so again, I tried to be pretty clear about this last time, but when you're talking about animals, you have beings who are irrational. They can't be reasoned with. They're getting in the way of what we're doing. And I mean, if you're talking about something as big as a deer, if a deer hops in front of your crop harvester, no one's going to fucking plow the deer. They're going to honk at it. They're going to get out and shoo it away. But if you're talking about little fucking animals like insects or field mice that can't be managed, there's not a way to do that, then yeah, that would happen. And if you really equalize a human to that, that would be fine. If you're going to try to go to your soy alien latte things, humans are rational beings. That is not the standard that we hold for other rational beings. We reason with them. If we can't communicate with them, we don't think it's fine to just eradicate them. So I don't accept that.
Oh, so that's your argument for the aliens, is that because we're rational, it's not ethical?
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to derail it to the aliens. I just think of that as associated with this, just because I associate that with you. But if you're saying it's okay to hit animals in crop production, why isn't it okay to hit a vegan in the road? Well, I mean, to just take one of many obvious reasons, you could ask the vegan to move. You can see the vegan there very clearly. The vegan's a rational agent who you can communicate with.
Yeah, but I mean, humans have like limitless capability for ingenuity. So if we wanted to clear the field of mice and rabbits before we harvest it, do you not think we could figure out a way to do that? Like, because I asked you this before, and you said it's not practical. That was your answer. Is like it's not practical.
Well, wait. Currently, I don't think that we have any technology that can do that. Do I hope that we eventually do? And would I support the development of it? Absolutely, 100%. Just like if you ask me, is it fundamentally unethical to buy something that's manufactured in a factory because people die in factories, and we know that'll happen if we run factories? I would say, well, no. And you'd say, what? So you just have to accept that all factory deaths? It's like, no, I'm all for finding whatever safety measures we can, whatever technological improvements, but the factory death isn't a murder.
Yeah, but what about like slave labor?
Slave labor?
Yeah.
I don't support slave labor.
Well, or like child labor, like sweatshops, like pseudo slave labor.
If you want to say that in the other parts of the world, there's types of labor that we wouldn't go with, you have to really think about it from a not like a Western-centric perspective. I think you actually will probably agree with this argument because I see you as like politically right-wing. If you think of what it's like to be in those societies, people always go to the jobs where they can make the most money. In other countries, they don't have our safety regulations. They don't have our standards. people are still doing the best work they can do. The logical consequence of that sort of leftist position there of you should actually boycott these industries is defund the industries where these people are working, so deprive them of the best work they can find and force them into shittier jobs for lower pay. So I think, no, it's people are doing the best work they can find. I support buying things from other countries. Absolutely.
Right. So I agree with what you just said, but I think there's a bit of a contradiction, which is like back to the original conversation where I presented you with the non-identity argument, and you agreed that you would rather exist as a farm animal than not exist at all. But that
you remember my response?
Yeah, but that you don't want to live in a world where that happens because it's two unethical things. But obviously,
Yes.
like working for slave labor in a coltan mine or whatever is not an ethical thing. Yet you accept that in that when it's in like the human, and it's not something that you're gonna have to do, right? Like,
Was it you who was talking about owning pets and stuff? Or no, that was the UFC guy.
I don't think
look,
that a
yeah.
vegan can support pet ownership consistently.
I don't either. But let me just explain this, because I think that this kind of stuff around that like economic shit, I don't think I'll have a hard time convincing you on. Because with the pets, I agree there's not any kind of valid reason to own a pet. But the thing is, right now we're in a situation where there's animals that are in these shelters, and it's either stuck in a cage or it's at your house being a pet. So I choose the lesser evil. But I don't support buying from breeders or anything that would actually perpetuate the pet industry.
That's not true. You do support something that, or you're against something that would support the pet industry, because you forced me to watch Earthlings, and one of the first things they said in that movie was that you need to castrate your dogs. But I know you're against dog castration because I saw that in another one of your videos. So if you don't castrate dogs, you wind up with more dogs and then more pets, or more dogs getting gassed, which is even worse.
To be totally honest, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about castration. It seems to me like chopping something's nuts off is pretty bad. It seems pretty unjustifiable, but if it turns out to be the case that it stops some massive quantity of suffering, I don't know exactly what I'd feel about that. So I'll admit that my position isn't well established there. I'm not sure exactly what I think about that, but I'll also just locate us for a minute here. This is kind of what you do. You like to go out to look with any ethical issue, LP, there's a center of the bullseye, and then there's increasing shades of gray the further you move from the bullseye. So just to take something we'll all agree with, you and I both agree that rape is wrong. I'm not even going to wait for you to confirm that, because I know you agree that's wrong. But if we start moving further and further away from the situation of just a needless rape, we say, okay, well, if you rape this person, you're going to save somebody. Then it's like, oh, okay, that starts to sound a little different. If you rape this person, you're going to stop a genocide. At that point, most people will say rape the person. So it's like there's a gray area around the edge. And if you find really gray areas, you'll get an honest answer from me of, I'm not totally sure. But I don't think that says anything about the core point.
No, that's fine. I was really confused when they brought that up in the movie, because I'd seen your thing and I was like, I wonder I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah.
But
clear,
you're showing me now that you can be pragmatic.
Yeah.
So just hypothetically speaking, what if you could be shown like irrefutably that having some number of like pasture cows, grass-fed cows, reduced overall suffering?
Yeah, I wouldn't want, again, so this is the same kind of thing as like, you ask, oh wait, is this one of those things where it's like, would you personally prefer to be that being? And is your moral position the same as your personal preference? Because I don't want a world where we allow people into existence on the condition that they get murdered. So unless I can specify some kind of difference that would make that justified in the human context, if it were true of the human context, I'm not going to support it in the animal context.
Yeah, but you don't want to live in a world where people get paid slave wages and children are forced to work in sweatshops and shit like that, do you? Do you want to live in that world?
No, there's tons of things that are not perfect about our current world. But with a kid working in some shitty ass, whether it's a sweatshop or coltan mine or whatever, again, like I thought you said you agree with this. The situation there
I
is
do, but that's because I also agree with
it's
eating
yeah, but
farm
it's the best.
animals based
Wait,
on the
wait, wait. But
non
I
entity argument. So I'm like
yeah,
consistent, but
but wait, wait,
you're
wait. No, because
making like
I wouldn't
sacrifices for
breed.
the animals that you're not making for the humans.
No, 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 no. Those humans are already alive, and you don't know what else you can do about them. You're talking about breeding more of them. I don't think we should breed people to put them to work in coltan mines.
Yeah, but when you perpetuate the industry by supporting it.
Yeah, but I don't see that as a wrong thing because it's better than the alternative, and people need
Well,
money.
okay, so the chicken that I'm going to eat tomorrow is already alive, Isaac. It's already been bred, so someone has to eat it.
Do you mean it's already dead?
Well, no, okay, the chicken I'm going to eat 2 weeks from now is already alive. You see where I'm
Mhm.
going with this?
Yeah, you don't save the chicken that's on your plate. It's an economic thing. And again, I feel like we
Exactly.
won't
So
diverge much
the
on
chicken
yeah.
on the grocery store shelf is already dead. So there's nothing wrong with eating it because there's nothing wrong with engaging in an industry that's going to perpetuate this unethical behavior, right?
Oh, I see what you're no, no, I see what you're trying to do. It's because the animals are the product. The thing is fundamentally it's you're paying for the animal to be killed. When you're talking about a sweatshop or something shitty happening in the other side of the world, you're talking about a situation where, again, not to sound repetitive, you've got people and it's either they're working in this shit ass condition or they're doing something even worse because people go to the best jobs they have access to. So to defund those industries, I would actually say is probably morally worse. So when you're talking about a chicken, you're actually talking about breeding beings into existence for the purpose of being murdered. If we were breeding sweatshop laborers into existence, that would be something I would say, fuck that, 100%.
Right. So I get what you're
Yeah.
saying. I totally follow you.
Okay.
It's just that you and I have a different position on the breeding animals because I would rather be bred into a chicken farm or whatever than to not exist. So therefore,
I
for
think that
me,
would
it's
be,
for
yeah.
me, it's I understand that for you, you don't accept that, but for me, it is a moral justification to keep eating chickens.
Is your, well, 1 second, because now it goes to, is your preference the same as your overall moral position? And we know that your preference is not the same because we can do things like, we can talk about the bloodline fireman department, or we can talk about, whatever. You don't think it's ethical to breed a human into existence and kill them just because that human would rather be alive than dead, right?
No, but that's because
So
that's
yeah,
because humans are different than animals.
yes.
Sapience, extended consciousness,
Yeah,
potential.
so but I'm just saying you have to compare like with like, right? So when you look at me, you're looking at a personal preference versus an overall moral position instead of comparing the two, right? So with you, it's like if you're saying that you have an overall moral position and your overall moral position isn't the same as your preference, it's that overall position that I'm talking about. It's not your preference. People have weird preferences. We override them for a broader moral code. And for anyone listening fresh to this, you just picture situations like everyone wants their own kids saved from a fire if it's a burning building, but most people wouldn't support some kind of like bloodline fire department shit. They would say we need a principle of fairness, and the police or fire people should save whoever is closest, not whoever is genetically related to me or something like that. So your preference and your moral position are different. And my moral position, and I think yours too, is that it's wrong to breed someone into existence for the purpose of killing them. So if you're going to say that's okay for animals, that would take us back to name the trade.
Yeah, well, we've gone over that also. I get what you're saying.
You have, are you unsatisfied? Do you have more you want to go through, or what are you saying?
So the last thing I was going to throw at you has to do with the sorry, the your
Pickle fucking?
no
Disabled blowjob?
no
You are a master of hypotheticals.
I try to keep it interesting, but so the when you say that you would accept that you're ethically consistent in eating crops because if you lived in bug world, you would accept the risk of getting turned into a rabbit and getting sprayed with pesticides or whatever, right? That whole thing.
That's one way to talk about it, but the broader thing is just we understand that there is something worthwhile coming out of that trade-off. We understand that it's categorically different than stabbing a being to death to consume their body. But what the kind of thing we're in with animals is basically they're not rational beings. You can't really You can't reason with them. They're going to get in the way of what you're doing. So you have to set a standard. So if you set your standard at the only things that are justified to fuck with animals with is pure necessity, then you're talking about collapsing virtually all industry. You're talking about regressing society to some like agrarian level. It seems kind of insane. But the thing is, once you set a standard,
that's the cost of ethical consistency, dude.
No, not necessarily. You could set a different baseline. That's the cost of holding that particular baseline. So if you set a baseline that's higher than necessity, then it's like you're going to allow some amount of that stuff on the table, and that's basically where I'm at.
I think you and I look at things a little bit differently. Like you've heard that Stalin quote where he says like one person killed or like one murder is a tragedy, but a million is a statistic.
I don't think like that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you seem to look at things like as like when you talk about the death from crops and stuff like that, you seem to look at them as statistics. But I'm looking at it from the perspective
I care.
If I was an animal getting sprayed with pesticides, like a good example of that is in the JF debate, you brought up this thing about two planets where one was overpopulated and people had like a lower standard of living, and the other planet is less population and everybody there has like a higher level of standard of living. And I kept waiting for JF to say this or somebody, but like when you were talking about that, I look at it through the perspective of the person who is like one of the extra people on the overpopulated planet. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, So I only get to live on the and would I rather do that, or would I sacrifice my existence so other people can have a higher quality of life? And like, for me, it's a no. I'd rather exist. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I came up with the vegan alien argument, because I wanted to see how you feel about accepting that risk when the risk is set at 100%.
I think you just have to look at like the nature of the killing, which is just, it's not something we want to be doing. It's a part of the function and progress of civilization. And when you're talking about it, it's like if you set the bar at necessity for killing animals, you're basically going to be talking about regressing society to some like agrarian level or something like that. You're talking about putting the vast majority of industries are not producing just food or shelter or something like this. You're talking about putting most of the world out of work. It's just, that seems to be a situation where there's such a massive quantity of suffering produced that it would be kind of ridiculous to hold that position. And I also want to point out, I think you're looking at me almost as if I would have some kind of deontological belief that my life has like infinite value and nothing can justify taking it. I do not think that humans have infinite value. I think that there's plenty of situations where it would be justified to kill me. All that I try to do, LP, is I try to make sure that our positions are consistent. I don't know that we have the perfect human ethics. I don't know that veganism is the perfect animal ethic. All I know is that we have a certain ethic on the table for humans, and most people's animal ethic is radically inconsistent with their human ethic. That's my problem.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that humans and animals are different, so that it makes sense to treat them differently. But I guess we're at the.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna give you a test of how well do you know my position now. What do you think I'm gonna say to that? They're different.
Yeah, no, you're gonna say name the trade or whatever. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna say what's the difference? Black people and white people are different. It has to be something specific.
Yeah,
you know where
it's a list of traits that you can't debunk, and you've conceded that you can't debunk. So,
well, I will say I'm sorry for coming in a little harsh. I will be totally honest. I got pretty annoyed with the Twitter shit, but I wish you the best. If you want to do round 4, you let me know, and if you want to discuss off the record, just. I'll link you to the Discord. I know you don't Discord, but you can join if you want to. I will tell people to be polite to you and fuck right off. There's tons of non-vegans in there.
All right, man.
Okay. It's good talking to you. Keep well.
Yeah, take care.